Hello, my name is Arturo, and my partners and I are going to talk about prison rights and its development in American history from the 1960s and onward.
Once an individual has been found guilty, many people assume that he or she has or should not have any rights. Until the 1960s, this was true to some extent. Before the 1960s, federal and state courts refused to hear prisoners' rights cases or decided those cases in such a way that made it clear that prisoners had few, if any, of the rights of free people. This era was called the hands-off era, meaning that courts rarely became involved in prisoners' rights cases. Consider this early example of Ruffin v. Commonwealth in 1871. In this case, the Supreme Court stated that inmate was a slave to the state, with the rights they did have were given to by the states. Later in 1974, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Wolf v. McDonald that prisoners lost all their constitutional rights. Even though inmates were originally seen as slaves of the state, there were some early court decisions that condemned inhumane treatment, but there were no effective procedures to secure prisoners' rights.
Some of these important cases that challenged the hands-off era before were the Jones v. Cunningham case of 1963 and the Cooper v. Pate case of 1964. The Jones v. Cunningham case established that state inmates had the right to file a right of habeas corpus, challenging both the legality and conditions of their imprisonment. With this, prisoners became more involved in imprisonment, which ensured the imprisonment of state prisoners was not as brutal and helped accommodate the prisoners' imprisonment more than ever before, which was especially evident in the later landmark case of Cooper v. Pate, which gave prisoners the standing to sue in federal court to address their grievances under the Civil Rights Act of 1871. After a black Muslim prisoner believed he was denied permission to buy religious publications and also denied other privileges awarded to other prisoners solely due to the fact he was a black Muslim. With the decisions reached by these court cases, prisoners were now more involved than ever before, and any true injustices done to prison inmates were now able to be addressed and resolved.
Since then, there are varying rights that are still retained for all American prisoners. To name a few, the Americans with Disability Act, which provides prisoners with disabilities with reasonable accommodations, prison litigation, judicial review, and the Eighth Amendment, which protects prisoners from cruel and unreasonable punishments. Equal Protection Clause, which requires equal treatment of all prisoners regardless of race, gender, etc., and the Model Sentencing and Correction Act, which protects prisoners from discrimination of race, gender, national origin, and religion. The following are two interviews featuring Ms. Garcia and Ms. Willis, respectively, about prisoners' rights.
Garcia.
What do you do for work?
I teach science, the best subject. Sorry, Miss Villafania.
Alright, I'm now asking questions about prisoners' rights. What do you know about prisoners' rights?
I'll be honest, I don't know much about like the specific rights for prisoners. All my knowledge is like coming from one book that I read. It's called Just Mercy, and it was really good. It was about a guy who was like on death row, and his rights were next to none, very little rights. And then like based on like TV shows that I've seen, I know they get paid like an abysmal amount of money, like cents per day. Limited amount of time with family and things like that. But in terms of specifics, I don't know. I just know it's pretty bad. No to little rights.
Alright, do you believe that prisoners should regain the same rights they had after they served their sentence?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I don't know, and I'm saying that because my first inclination was to say like yes, they should get their rights back. I'm more on the side of like restoring like harm, like restorative justice, which has been proven in a like criminal justice system. If some harm is done, the harm is repaired through restorative practices. However, I myself have never been like personally like victimized or anything like that. Like what if someone had like harmed a loved one of mine? I don't know how I would feel about like the person who's in prison. Like should they get their rights back? I'd feel really upset about it if they did, I think. So I'm not sure. I want to say yes, they should get their rights back, but at the same time, I'm saying that from like a place of privilege where I haven't been personally affected by it. So.
How much freedom do you believe prisoners should have?
While they're in prison?
Yeah, well,
While in prison, I still firmly believe people should be treated like a basic human being, access to like proper resources to live, an okay life. But definitely if they've like done harm to society, don't think that they should have like all of their rights.
What are some unalienable rights they should have?
Give me an example of an unalienable right.
Like the right to breathe. Or eat food. Or get fed.
I think prisoners should eat, have water, have clean air, access to a safe and clean environment.
All right. Do you believe prisoners are treated just in today's
No,
system?
I don't think prisoners are treated just in today's system.
Why?
Well, I think so. First of all, I think there are a lot of issues like just with the criminal justice system. I think it's an inherently racist and classist system, and that just goes like you just look at the demographics of the people in prison. It's mostly people of color, low income people. Sometimes these people are in for a crime that they did not commit. And again, most of my knowledge is coming from like this book I read, where like this guy was on death row for years, like 30 years of his life, for a crime he legitimately did not commit, even though there was like this like really strong evidence that he didn't do it. Because he was a poor black man, he was in prison on death row, and he was about to be like killed until like finally they like released him and was all set up. So I know that was a really long way to answer your question, but no, prisoners are not treated just, and there's lots of like loopholes and problems with our criminal justice system.
All right. Thank you for your time. There you go. All right. What is your name? What do you do?
My name is Miss Willis, and I teach world history in Avid.
All right. What do you know about prisoners' rights?
That's such an open-ended question. Like, what?
You know anything?
I think you guys needed a better question. Like, what do you mean prisoners' rights? Can we like focus in on a certain thing? Like how many hours they get outside? How many?
No, we're just
hours
asking if
they
you have
get-
any general idea about prisoners' rights. Like, what's the extent of your knowledge over the subject?
They really don't have any.
All right. Do you believe that prisoners should regain their rights after they serve their sentence?
Should they regain their rights?
Yeah,
Yes.
the rights they once had before.
Yes.
All right. How much freedom do you believe prisoners should have when imprisoned?
How much freedom should they have? They should be able to do the necessary things. I don't freaking know. What kind of questions are these? Like, what?
Can we just come back?
Yeah, like, these are some open-ended questions. It's like, they should be able to pee when they need to. They should be able to shit when they need to. They should be able to, like,
Closed doors.
It's crazy. Because he was able to answer
Not-
it, but no, it's not.
not necessarily behind closed doors, but just if they need to go to the bathroom.
Are we gonna keep
I don't know. I've never been to prison. I don't know what they have.
Did you add that
This
in?
is a banger, man.
Maybe we should come back.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't think she don't like the next one.
What is the next one?
What are some inalienable rights they should have?
Oh, I could do that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when they need to use the bathroom or relieve themselves, they should be able to relieve themselves. They should be able to pray freely. They should be able to eat a healthy meal. I do know that they give prisoners trash in the prison system. Yeah,
Do you believe prisoners are treated just?
no.
Why not?
I'm quite certain that they're abused in prison guards and such, and other prisoners. And they're not necessarily protected when there is an issue.
All right, thank you.